We also have reinforcers that are based on time. Immediate reinforcers occur either very quickly after or immediately after a behavior. And so, for example, getting a food pellet after a rat presses a bar. That is immediate, it happens. Delayed reinforcers or delayed gratification is a reinforcer that comes after a certain amount of time for that behavior. For example, waiting for your paycheck at the end of the week. We don't get paid after every single hour that we work. We wait for that paycheck at the end of the week. We tend to engage in behavior that is going to be followed by immediate reinforcers rather than those delayed. We would rather get gratification or reinforcement after every time we do a behavior than waiting to get that gratification later. So the principles that we need to go over and we need to really strongly understand for operant conditioning there's two basic ones, and then they each have another part. The first is reinforcement. We've talked about this already. Reinforcement is the idea that we are trying to increase behavior. Okay? We want the behavior to continue, either continue or increase. Punishment is not always bad. It's just getting someone to either stop doing a behavior or decrease that behavior. Okay? Reinforcement increasing goes up, behavior goes up. Punishment decreasing, punishment goes down, or behavior goes down. The other part of this are the positive and negative side of things. This is for both reinforcement and punishment. Okay? So there's positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative punishment. I do not want you to think of these as positive and negative. I want you to think of them as plus and minus, like we would think about in math, okay? So this is our plus sign, this is our minus sign or subtraction sign. So plus means we are adding something, okay? So we are adding something. Negative means we are taking something away. We are minusing something, subtracting something. So plus, minus, adding, taking away. That's what we're looking at with positive and negative. So let's first look at reinforcement. Positive reinforcement increases, right? Reinforcement is always going to increase a behavior, but positive reinforcement is going to increase a behavior by adding something. In this case, it's going to be something good, okay? So what do we want to be added in order to increase a behavior? Here's some examples. Adding $5 for each A that you get. Okay, so we want to increase the behavior of getting A's, so we add $5. Getting candy every time you get a right answer. We want to increase right answers, so we're going to give you candy. Okay, negative reinforcement is still increasing a behavior. Okay, because it's reinforcement. We still want that behavior to increase or continue, but we are taking something away. We are removing an adverse stimulus. Adverse means bad. We don't like it. So if we need to take something away to increase behavior, what would we do? Well, we take an aspirin, right? So we're going to increase the idea of taking an aspirin. That's the behavior. And we are getting rid of a headache. That's the bad stimulus. Faking an illness to go to school. So we are to avoid going to school. So we increase the behavior of faking the illness by taking away something bad, school in this case. Using an umbrella from getting wet. We are taking away the getting wet, and we're increasing the behavior of using an umbrella. Those are all negative reinforcers, okay? So why would this work? So for example, your mom wants you to clean your room more often. She wants to increase that behavior. She plans to negatively reinforce you once you clean it. So when you finally clean your room, she says, "Great job, honey. Now we will take away your car keys." We've taken something away. Is it going to increase the behavior? Absolutely not, right? Why would you want to clean your room more if she's just going to take away your keys? What could she take away to increase you cleaning your room? Well, she could take away additional chores. She could take away maybe a punishment that you would get, right? So Those are things that she would take away that would get you to clean your room more often. Okay, here's another example. Your teacher wants you to complete your homework. He plans to positively reinforce you once you do. When you do your homework, he says, "Great job. Now tonight you have an additional hour of homework as your reward." Would that increase your behavior? No, absolutely not. Why would I do my homework when you're just going to give me more homework? No. So in order to increase you doing your homework, you could take away or you could add something positive, okay? So adding candy after every time you do your homework would increase your chances of doing homework. Adding a extra credit point every time you do your homework, that is going to increase your likelihood of doing your homework, okay? Okay, now I want you to skip a part of your notes. Go to the next page of your notes at the very bottom, okay? We're going to come back to the stuff at the top, but we need to talk first about punishment, positive and negative punishment. So remember, punishment is decreasing behavior, okay? So either stopping behavior or decreasing it. And it's the same thing with positive and negative. We are either adding or we are taking away. So for positive punishment, I know I froze, I'm sorry, just ignore my face up there. For positive punishment, we are decreasing a response or a behavior by adding an adverse stimuli, a bad stimuli. So what would we add in order to decrease someone's behavior? Well, you could give someone a spanking, that's adding a bad thing in order to decrease a tantrum. You could add a parking ticket in order to reduce speeding, okay? Positive punishment. Negative punishment is getting the behavior to decrease, okay? So getting that behavior to happen less often by taking away a positive stimuli. This is also called omission training. So what could you take away to decrease behavior? Well, you could take away a driver's license, that's something good, or take away the keys if someone's speeding, okay? You could take away a privilege, okay? A timeout or a grounding, you're grounded from your phone. You could take away that privilege of your phone by, in order to decrease talking back. That's the idea of negative punishment. So let's look at these scenarios again. Your dad wants you to stop yelling at your sister. He plans to negatively punish your yelling. When you yell at her, he says, "That's it. I'm taking away your chores for a week." Would that decrease your behavior? No. You would want to yell at your sister more because you're going to have less chores. So what could he take away that would decrease your yelling? Well, he could take away your cell phone. He could take away your car keys. That would get you to stop yelling. Again, your principal wants students to stop misbehaving at lunch. She plans to positively punish students when they misbehave. When a student acts up, she says, "That's it, I'm giving you a lollipop." Would that decrease the misbehavior? No. What could she add that would decrease misbehavior? She could add a detention. She could add a demerit. Okay? That's the idea of positively punishing. Okay? Okay, so how does punishment work? Does it work? So there is some justification for occasional punishment. However, it usually leads to negative effects. Punishment can result in unwanted fears. It can convey no information really to the organism. Some punishments like give you nothing, like you don't really understand why that is your punishment. It also justifies pain to others or inflicting pain on others. The unwanted behaviors usually reappear if the punishment doesn't happen. And then aggression towards the agent or aggression can be seen as okay. And then one unwanted behavior is usually going to be replaced when the other one is punished. Okay? Okay, so let's go back to reinforcement. I know, we're kind of flipping all over the place. But types of reinforcement schedules. We can reinforce in different time frames. So the first is continuous reinforcement. This is probably the easiest to understand. Continuous means all of the time. So continuous reinforcement is reinforcing the behavior after every single time. Okay? Continuous reinforcement has to happen in the initial stages of learning, meaning that like when you're first teaching a toddler to go to the bathroom, on the toilet, to potty train, right? They're going to need that reinforcement after every single time they go on the toilet. Maybe it's a sticker, maybe it's a piece of candy. That's continuous reinforcement. Partial reinforcement or intermittent is the idea that we're giving a reinforcer only part of the time, okay? This results in slower learning, okay? It takes a little bit longer for someone to get the idea if you use partial reinforcement. However, when you do this later on, this partial reinforcement, usually the resistance to extinction is greater. So you're not necessarily going to stop doing that behavior because you're not sure when you're going to get that reinforcer, okay? So this partial reinforcement now we need to break down because there's different types, okay? We have ratio, which is the number of times. So the reinforcement happens after a specific number of times the behavior is performed, or interval. Interval is the amount of time. So after a certain amount of time has passed. So ratio is after 4 times of you behaving that way, you get that piece of candy. Interval would be like after 30 minutes, you get a piece of candy when you're acting like that, okay? So we have fixed ratio. Fixed ratio is going to be reinforcing a response only after a specified number of responses. So for example, using those reward cards at a store. When you buy 10, you get one free, okay? There's a specific number that needs to happen. You need to buy 10 coffees in order to get one free, okay? Variable ratio is reinforcing a response after an unpredicted amount of time, okay? So gambling is an example of this. So you don't know how many times you're going to have to push the button on the slot machine in order to win it, right? So it's a random number of times that you have to perform the behavior in order to get your reinforcement. So pushing the slot machine button, if you continuously push that button, eventually you're going to win, but it's different every time, okay? Fixed interval is going to be reinforcing a behavior after a specific amount of time has passed. For example, studying for a test the night before. So you're going to study, you're going to see that behavior reinforced the night before, and then getting paid every 2 weeks. That's the best one right there, right? So you're going to go to work because you know you're going to get paid at the end of the 2 weeks. The variable interval is going to be reinforcing a response after an unpredicted amount of time. So for example, fishing. It's not necessarily the amount of times that you throw that you put the fishing line into the water. It's just an amount of time that you have to wait. Or stargazing. It varies how much time you're going to have to wait to see a shooting star. Okay? It varies from time to time. So these are the schedules of reinforcement and how well they work, okay? Or of when they're going to happen. So variable ratio is here. So here is our time that is passed. So it's just the amount of times, right? This is the number of responses. Variable responses, we have a lot here, then we get a reinforcement. A lot of responses here, then we get a reinforcement. Less, 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 okay? Fixed ratio is the same amount of responses, you get a reinforcer. Variable interval is going to be the amount of time that is passed, and then fixed interval is the fixed amount of time that is passed.